Welcome to 5 True Ghost Stories, the most terrifying I have ever known. I am your storyteller, and tonight I want you to dim the lights. Leave only a small candle or the blue glow of your phone screen. End quote. Because what is about to be told is not meant for daylight. We will not talk about serial killers or unsolved crimes. Tonight, we will talk about things that are very close to us, but not made of flesh and bone. Things that might be standing behind your bedroom door, or sitting in the back seat of your car, or watching you through a foggy shower mirror. The stories I am about to tell have been passed down through generations, from grandmother to grandchild, from neighbor to neighbor. Some say they are just rumors. Some swear they saw them with their own eyes. Some dare not even repeat them a second time. But I am not telling you so that you believe or disbelieve. I am telling you so that you remember. This world still has dark corners that science has not touched, sounds that physics cannot explain, and shadows that logic cannot dispel. And sometimes fear teaches us the most important thing of all. Cherish those still beside you. Speak words of love before it is too late. And never ignore a knock at midnight, whether you believe in ghosts or not. Sit down. Pull the blanket up to your chin if you like. Breathe easy. But do not close your eyes completely, because some stories, once heard, will make you never want to turn off the light again. Let us begin. A small town named Pine Grove, Alabama. The year 1987. An old house at the end of a dirt road where the Davis family, young newlyweds named Terrence and Keisha Davis, moved 6 months after their wedding. They bought the house for an unusually low price, only 1/3 of what others in the area cost. The real estate agent just smiled vaguely and said, "The house is a bit old." Nothing more. But Keisha noticed his evasive eyes. They did not know that the house had stood abandoned for 12 years after the previous owner, a woman named Eloise, committed suicide in the bathroom. People said she had slit her wrists right in front of the large mirror, and the blood had spread across the white tile floor for hours before being discovered. The first week, everything was normal. Terrence worked from morning till night. Keisha stayed home arranging things. But on the 8th day, Keisha began noticing strange things. Every morning, as she brushed her teeth in front of the bathroom mirror, she felt that her reflection was delayed by a beat. She raised her hand to her cheek. The mirror did the same, but only after half a second. She blinked. The mirror blinked a tiny moment later. Keisha thought she was hallucinating from lack of sleep because she was still busy unpacking. 3 weeks later, Terrence was working the night shift at a wood processing plant. Keisha was home alone. Around 2 in the morning, she woke to the sound of water running in the bathroom, not from the shower, but from the sink, as if someone had turned it on and walked away. She got out of bed, barefoot on the cold wooden floor. She pushed open the bathroom door. The faucet was fully open, water overflowing the basin and spilling onto the floor. She quickly turned it off. But when she looked up into the mirror, she saw a woman standing behind her, not her own reflection. Another woman, dressed in a long white gown, her black hair drenched as if she had just bathed, her face without eyes, only 2 deep black hollows, as if someone had punched 2 holes in a sheet of white paper. Her lips were pressed together, and one hand was raised, touching Keisha's shoulder. Keisha spun around. No one was there. The bathroom was empty, only steam rising from the sink. She ran to the living room, hands trembling, dialing her husband. But instead of a ringtone, the other end of the line only emitted a heavy breathing sound. A deep, rhythmic breath, as if someone was holding the phone and breathing directly into the receiver. Then, a raspy, very small voice came through. "Do not turn your back on me." The next morning, Keisha could not eat. She dragged Terrence to the old neighbor, a woman named Mama Ruth, who had lived in the area for 50 years. Mama Ruth was a tall, dark-skinned woman with white hair, always wearing a necklace of ebony wood. She looked at Keisha for a long moment, then sighed. Mama Ruth told that Eloise, the former owner, had once been the prettiest girl in town. She loved a man named Calvin, and they planned to marry that autumn. But on the night before the wedding, Calvin ran off with another woman, leaving Eloise alone in her white wedding dress. Eloise stood before that mirror for hours, putting on makeup, doing her hair, waiting for him to come back. She did not eat, did not sleep, only sat before the mirror and whispered, "You will see how beautiful I am. You will return." Then, one night, she took a razor blade and cut her wrists right in front of that mirror. The blood spread across the tile floor, and people say those bloodstains seeped into the mirror's seams, never to be cleaned away. Ever since, the rumor goes that Eloise's ghost still lives inside the mirror. She does not want to harm anyone, only to find a woman to replace her, someone who would sit before the mirror with her, so that she would not be lonely. But if anyone looks straight into her eyes in the mirror at midnight, she will drag that person into the other world. Mama Ruth said, "Never look into a mirror at midnight, and if you see a shadow behind you that is not yours, turn on all the lights." Darkness is her friend. Keisha and Terrence moved out of that house a week later, leaving behind all their belongings, even clothes, wedding photos, and their savings jar. They only took the car and drove straight to a neighboring state, never to return. A few months later, the new owner had the mirror smashed. The workman, a man named Bobby, said that when he lifted the mirror off the wall, there was no wall behind it, only a black, bottomless void. And from within came the sound of a woman crying as if her heart had shattered into 100 pieces. This story is a reminder of obsession and envy. Eloise spent the rest of her life waiting for someone who never came back. Her pain turned into fury, and that fury tried to pull others down with her. But deep down, she just wanted someone to see her one last time. Sometimes, the most terrifying thing is not a ghost, but unresolved emotions. Learn to let go before you become trapped in your own mirror. Baltimore, Maryland. An old apartment building on Franklin Street, once a field hospital during the American Civil War. The building had 3 floors with faded red brick walls and wooden stairs that creaked every time someone stepped on them. In 1992, a young family, a man named DeAndre, his wife Tasha, and their 5-year-old son Jordan, moved into a 3rd-floor apartment. They chose it because the rent was unbelievably cheap, only $150 a month. The first night, Jordan woke up screaming. He pointed toward the hallway, where the dim light cast shadows on the wall. "There's a man, Daddy. He has no legs. He's crawling." DeAndre told him it was a dream. He picked Jordan up, soothed him, and the boy fell back asleep after half an hour. But the second night, the third night, the same thing happened. And then Tasha herself began to see things. Every time she walked up the stairs from the 2nd to the 3rd floor, the longest, darkest flight, she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. The hand had no weight, but it was as cold as ice, and when it touched her skin, it left a numb, tingling sensation. She turned around, and nothing was there. But her shadow on the wall now had a second shadow beside it, a man in a hat, carrying a stretcher, and that shadow did not move in rhythm with hers. They asked the building manager, an old man named Mr. Henderson, who had lived there since 1960. He was silent for a long while, then told them to go to the back, sit on the steps, and listen. During the Civil War, the third floor of this building had been an operating room. Union doctors set up their tables right in the middle of the room, and hundreds of wounded soldiers were brought up from the battlefield. Many did not survive. The dead were carried out through those stairs, down to the basement, and buried in a mass grave behind the house. There was one young soldier named Samuel, 19 years old, from a farm in Vermont. He had been hit by a cannonball that took off both his legs above the knee. They brought him to the operating room, but the wounds were too severe. Infection had spread through his whole body. He cried for 3 days, not from the pain, but because he knew he would never go home, never walk on his own legs again. He died at midnight, right there on the stretcher, his eyes still open. People say that Samuel's ghost still goes up and down the stairs, searching for his legs. He is not evil, just lost. He crawls from the first floor to the third, from the third down to the first, and if he meets anyone, he often touches their shoulder and asks, "Where are my legs?" DeAndre did not believe any of it. He was a practical man, an auto mechanic, not one for ghosts. He decided to stay because the rent was too cheap to find anywhere else. But one night, coming home from work at 2 in the morning, he opened the apartment door and saw Jordan's bedroom door wide open. In the living room, Tasha and Jordan were huddled in the corner, their faces pale as wax candles. They were shaking uncontrollably. Tasha told him, around midnight, she heard a noise coming from under Jordan's bed. She walked into her son's room, bent down, and saw a legless man lying under the bed. He wore a torn gray uniform, long hair matted with dried blood. He turned his face up to look at her, his eyes white and blank, and whispered, "Where are my legs?" Then he crawled out from under the bed, across the living room, toward the window, and vanished through the glass, even though the window was locked tight. The next morning, DeAndre said nothing. He lifted Jordan's mattress and found an old piece of burlap, gray, stained with dried blood. The piece was as small as a hand, with burnt edges. They took it to the local historical museum in Baltimore. The expert identified it as part of a Union soldier's uniform, the kind of burlap issued to privates, dated 1864. He said they could not explain how that piece of cloth had ended up under a 5-year-old boy's mattress in an apartment built in 1920. This story made me think a great deal. Samuel's ghost was not evil. He was simply trapped between two worlds, unable to leave the place where he had died in pain and surprise. He did not want to frighten anyone, only to find a lost part of his body, something that symbolized the wholeness he never had while alive. It reminds us of the price of war. Millions of people left without a goodbye, and their anguish still lingers where they once lived. Look at the unknown soldiers. Look at the old cemeteries. In a way, every ghost is a plea to be remembered. A small town named Dawson, Georgia, the year 2005, a 2-story house built on the foundations of an old orphanage from the 1950s. That orphanage had been shut down after a major scandal. 3 children disappeared in the same month, and the manager was accused of abuse. But for lack of evidence, he was released. The new house was built in 2000, erasing all traces of the past. The Owens family, parents Leroy and Shanice, and their 10-year-old daughter Maya, moved in during the summer of 2005. They were an ordinary family. Leroy was a welder, Shanice a public health nurse. Maya was a smart girl who loved reading and drawing. Her room was on the 2nd floor, against the north wall of the house. Maya was the first to hear it. Every night, at exactly 3 in the morning, the sound of a child crying came from inside her wall. Not from the next room, not from outside the window, from inside the wall itself. A tiny, choked-up crying, as if a small child was trapped there and could not get out. Sometimes the crying lasted 15 minutes, sometimes an hour, then fell silent. Leroy thought it might be rats or loose wiring. He took a hammer and chisel and knocked a hole in the wall to check. He chiseled through the plaster, then through the raw brick. Nothing. No wiring, no pipes, no dead rat, just cement and brick. He patched the hole, but the next night, the crying returned, louder than before. Shanice, with a mother's and a nurse's instinct, grew worried. She went to the local church where an elderly pastor named Jerome, an old black man with silver hair and gentle brown eyes, had served since 1965. He knew all the old stories. Pastor Jerome told that the orphanage once had a little girl named Emily, 7 years old, with black hair and brown eyes, always smiling. Once, because she was so hungry, Emily sneaked into the kitchen and stole a loaf of bread. The manager, a man named Bartholomew, caught her. Instead of punishing her with a beating, he locked Emily in the basement storage room, a small room with no windows and only a thick wooden door. He said, "I'll open the door in 3 days, so you'll know what hunger is." But Bartholomew forgot about Emily. Only 5 days later, when a foul smell rose from the basement, did anyone find her. Emily had died of cold and starvation. She lay curled in the corner of the room, her arms still clutching the moldy loaf of bread. Later, when the orphanage was torn down to build the new house, that storage room was filled with cement and became part of the second-floor bedroom wall. There was a local rumor: if you pressed your ear to that wall at 3 in the morning and called Emily's name 3 times, you would hear her answer. And the answer was always, "Mommy, I'm cold." Shanice decided to try. She was not afraid. She felt pity more than fear. One night, while Leroy was on the night shift, Shanice woke at 3, went into Maya's room, and pressed her ear to the north wall. She whispered, very softly, "Emily, Emily, Emily." Silence. A silence so long that Shanice thought she had imagined it. Then from inside the wall, a child's voice came, not a whisper, but as clear as church bells on Sunday. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Shanice burst into tears. She did not scream or run. She sat down on the floor, leaned her back against the wall, and cried for a long time. The next morning, she asked Leroy to bring a plate of fresh bread, a warm glass of milk, and a small pink blanket. She placed them in front of the wall and said, her voice trembling, "Emily, we cannot pull you out, but you are not alone anymore. You can stay here with us if you want." From that night on, the crying stopped. But sometimes, at midnight, Maya still hears a lullaby, a very old, very soft melody with no clear words, as if an invisible mother is soothing a child who never grows up. Maya says that sometimes she also sees tiny handprints appear on the wall surface, a child's fingerprints, then slowly fade away as dawn breaks. This is a story about being forgotten. Emily died in silence, unknown and unmourned. And her ghost only wanted one thing: to be acknowledged, to be told that she existed. A kind word, a plate of bread, a warm blanket, that is all the other world asks of us. Never forget that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can soothe a pain that has lasted for decades. Highway 66, Oklahoma. A long, lonely stretch between dry plains, with no streetlights, no gas stations, only rocks and thick bushes. For decades, long-haul truckers have told of a black car, an old model resembling a late 1950s Ford Fairlane. It has no license plate, no headlights, and it appears at midnight, usually between 2 and 3 in the morning. It runs parallel to their vehicles, with no engine noise, only the soft sound of tires rolling on asphalt. And when they glance at the driver's side window, they see an empty driver's seat. But the steering wheel still turns, moving as if guided by an invisible hand. This story began in 1958. A young couple named Marvin and Coretta Williams and their 2-year-old daughter Jasmine were driving from Oklahoma City to their home in Tulsa after a Christmas party. Marvin was a tire plant worker. Coretta worked at a laundromat. They did not have much money, but they had each other, and Jasmine, a curly-haired little girl who loved to laugh. Route 66 at that time had no streetlights, and a light rain was falling. A truck going the opposite direction crossed the center line and crashed head-on into Marvin's car. All three died instantly. Little Jasmine was thrown out the window and lay on the roadside, her doll still in her hand. But the strange thing was, after the accident, Marvin's car disappeared. Police searched for 10 days, combing every patch of grass, every house in the area. Nothing. They concluded that someone had towed it away for scrap that night, but there was no receipt, no witness, and no scrapyard admitted to buying it. From that year on, drivers began reporting the black driverless car. At first, just 1 or 2, then dozens, then hundreds. In 1972, a trucker named Big Joe, a big burly man with a beard who never believed in ghosts, encountered that car. He told the story. That night, the sky was clear, no other traffic on the road. Suddenly, through his rear-view mirror, he saw a black car following about 50 meters behind. It had no lights on. He sped up, it sped up. He slowed, it slowed. Then, it pulled up alongside his cab. Big Joe looked over and saw an empty driver's seat. But in the back seat, there were 3 shadows, 2 adults and a child, not real people, but like faint, translucent wisps of smoke. The child was waving at him, slowly, as if saying goodbye. Big Joe recalled in a 1985 interview, his voice choked. "I cried. I wasn't scared. I cried because that little child waved at me like it knew I once had a baby girl who died. Like it wanted to say, there are still children on the other side." But Big Joe was not the only one. There was another witness, a woman named Dolores, who had been driving long-haul trucks since 1985. In 1998, Dolores was hauling a load from Amarillo to Tulsa, again on that same stretch of Route 66. Around 2 in the morning, her truck suddenly died right in the middle of nowhere. No other vehicles in sight. She turned off her lights, stepped out to check the engine. The night was so dark she could barely see her own hands. Then, about 30 meters away, she saw the black car. No lights, no sound, just sitting there, as if it had been waiting for her. Dolores grabbed her flashlight, her heart pounding, and walked slowly toward it. Her boots crunched on the gravel. The air grew colder with every step. When she got close, she saw that the rear door was slightly open. Not forced, not broken, just open. Dolores aimed her flashlight inside. The beam swept over an empty front seat, a dusty dashboard, and then a tiny hand reached out from the darkness of the back seat. A child's hand, small fingers, pale as moonlight. It reached toward her, not grabbing, just waiting. Dolores did not scream. She did not run. Later, she would tell her friends, "I don't know why, but I wasn't scared." That little hand, it felt like it had been reaching out for a very long time. She slowly extended her own hand. The tiny fingers wrapped around hers. The touch was cold, but not hard, like holding a handful of cool water. Dolores whispered, her voice cracking. "Mommy's here now. Mommy's not leaving you." The little hand squeezed once, gently, then let go. The rear door slowly closed by itself, and the black car began to roll backward into the darkness. No engine, no lights, just fading away until it was swallowed by the night. Dolores stood there for a long time, her hand still raised in the air. She never told anyone she was crying, but her friends noticed that after that night, she never laughed the same way again. Years later, when asked about that night, Dolores would only say this: "I don't know if it was a ghost or something else. But I know one thing, that little child just wanted someone to hold its hand, even for a moment, and I'm glad I was there." To this day, the black car is still reported. The most recent was in 2019. A young woman named Destiny, driving from Texas to Kansas, captured a faint video on her phone. In the video, a black car appears beside her, runs for about 20 seconds, then vanishes. No turn, no brake, no side road. Destiny posted the video online and received hundreds of comments from other drivers who had also seen that car. This story has no solution, but it teaches us something. Even in death, the love of a family can keep a soul from moving on. Marvin, Coretta, and Jasmine may still be trying to complete that unfinished journey. The road home on Christmas Eve, 1958. They do not want to hurt anyone. They only want to go home. Sometimes the most terrifying ghosts are the most pitiful. And instead of fear, understand that every time you see something strange, you may just be witnessing a heart that cannot yet rest. Wave at them. Reach out your hand. Who knows? A simple touch from this world might be the gift they need to finally find peace. Detroit, Michigan. An old neighborhood on Hastings Street, where two-story wooden houses stand shoulder to shoulder, iron fences rusted, old maple trees dropping yellow leaves in autumn. A light blue house, number 2214, where the Jenkins family, grandmother Odessa, her son Tyrone, and her 15-year-old grandson Marcus had lived since 1980. It all began in September 1995. Every night, at exactly 12 o'clock, 3 clear knocks on the door. Knock, 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 knock. Each knock exactly 2 seconds apart. Tyrone, a tall man who had worked in a steel mill, ran to open the door the first time. No one was there. The street was empty, only the wind blowing through dry leaves. The fence was taller than a man. No one could have run away that fast without making a sound. They checked the back door, the windows, the roof. No sign of forced entry, but the knocking continued, night after night. Some nights, it knocked only 3 times and stopped. Some nights, it knocked in multiple rounds, as if someone very patient, very sad, was still waiting. Grandma Odessa, then 72 years old, remembered an old story her own mother had told her. She called Tyrone and Marcus to the kitchen table and told them, 30 years ago, before the Jenkins family moved in, another family lived in this house. They were the Browns, parents and 3 sons. The youngest son, Jerome, 17 years old, was a good boy, a good student who loved playing guitar. One evening, Jerome walked to a friend's house at the end of the street. On his way back, he accidentally witnessed a gang execution. He could not get away in time. A stray bullet hit him in the chest, near his heart. Jerome tried to crawl home. He crawled 20 meters, blood spreading on the sidewalk, and when he reached his front door, he knocked 3 times. He called for his mother, but his mother was sound asleep and did not hear. In the morning, she opened the door and found her son lying dead on the doorstep, his hand still against the door. Ever since, the neighbor said that Jerome's ghost knocks every night, waiting to be saved, but no one can save him anymore. Marcus, Odessa's grandson, listened to the story and was not afraid. He was a quiet, thoughtful boy. He said to his grandmother, "If Jerome just wants someone to hear him, why don't we sit down beside the door?" One night, when the knocking came again, Marcus did not open the door. He did not run away. He walked to the door, gently sat down on the floor, leaned his back against the wooden door, and said in a soft voice, as if speaking to a friend, "Jerome, I know you're gone. I can't open the door for you because I'm not your mother, but I'm sitting here with you. You are not alone." The knocking stopped. Silence. Then Marcus felt, on the other side of the door, something very light, like an invisible hand pressed against the wood, right where his back was resting. A warm feeling spread through him, then faded, and from that night on, the knocking never returned. The next morning, Grandma Odessa opened the door to sweep the porch. She saw on the outside of the door, at the height of a teenager's hand, a small handprint. It was not Marcus's fingerprint, nor anyone else's in the family. It was the mark of a young, clumsy hand, as if someone had pressed their palm against the door and left a faint, smoky trace. And beside that handprint, in the thin layer of dust, someone had written a single word with their finger: "Thank you." This last story, to me, is the warmest of the 5. It does not teach us how to be afraid. It teaches us how to listen. Sometimes, lost souls do not need us to open the door. They do not need exorcisms or incense. They only need someone to sit down beside them, to acknowledge that they once existed, that their pain was real, and that they are not alone. A kind word, a quiet presence, that can be the medicine for wounds that never heal. We have walked through 5 stories together, 5 souls that could not leave. And, if you noticed, you will see a common thread. There are no monsters in these stories. Only flesh and blood human beings who died in pain, suddenly or forgotten. They stayed to knock on doors, to cry inside walls, to drive unfinished journeys, to search for a reflection in a mirror. In my own way, I believe ghosts are not meant to frighten children. Ghosts are stories of incompleteness, of words left unsaid, of doors never opened. And when you hear 3 knocks at midnight, the right question is not, "Who's there?" but, "What made this person unable to leave?" I hope that after these stories, you not only shiver, but also feel grateful that you still have the chance to speak love to those beside you. Do not leave things unfinished. And if one night you hear knocking at midnight, do not be quick to fear. Ask what they need. Perhaps your answer will be the last thing they need to finally move on. And now, to be perfectly clear and honest, let me add a few words. The 5 stories you just heard are inspired by American folklore, tales passed down through generations, especially within the African American community. They are not investigative reports, nor 100% factual news. All character names and place names have been completely changed. My purpose is not to make you believe in ghosts, nor to exploit fear for views. My purpose is to evoke compassion for the dead, for forgotten fates, and for the living among us. This is my personal perspective. No one is forced to agree. But if after this episode you feel like calling your mother or hugging the person next to you, then I have done what I set out to do. Thank you for listening to 5 True Ghost Stories, the most terrifying I have ever known. I am your storyteller. Remember, even in the deepest darkness, you are never truly alone.